Chapter 1. The Birth of the Warrior Sun. In the beginning, there was chaos on the sacred mountain of Coatepec, the Serpent Hill. There, the earth goddess Huitzilopochtli, she of the serpent skirt, swept the temple steps and found herself miraculously pregnant. The child she carried was Huitzilopochtli, destined to become the god of the sun and war. But his conception sparked fury. His sister, Coyolxauhqui, and their 400 brothers, the Sensen Huitznahua, gods of the stars, plotted to kill their mother to preserve their honor. As they stormed the mountain to spill her blood, Coatlicue screamed in agony, but her son, still in the womb, was ready. In an instant, Huitzilopochtli burst forth fully grown and armed, wielding a serpent-shaped weapon called the Xiuhcoatl, the fire serpent. He struck down his siblings with ferocious might, casting Coyolxauhqui from the mountaintop. Her body shattered upon the rocks, her dismembered remains said to form the moon, her brothers scattered across the heavens, stars forever fleeing the sun. Thus was Huitzilopochtli born, not in peace, but in cosmic bloodshed, his first breath drawn as the warrior sun who must forever battle darkness. Chapter 2. The Sacred Mandate. Huitzilopochtli and the Mexica Destiny. Long before they called themselves Aztecs, the Mexica were wanderers, tribal nomads guided by visions and omens. They claimed descent from the mythical homeland of Aztlan, but it was their divine protector, Huitzilopochtli, who gave them purpose. He did not speak softly. Through visions delivered to priests and leaders, Huitzilopochtli commanded the Mexica to journey south, to seek a land of destiny, a place where they would build a city more powerful than any before it. The journey was brutal. Across deserts and rivers, over mountains and into hostile lands, they wandered for generations, often treated as outcasts by more established city-states. But always they listened, always they obeyed. They were not merely searching for a home, they were enacting a prophecy. Huitzilopochtli promised glory, but only through sacrifice, discipline, and endless war. In return, he offered divine favor and the power to conquer. His voice shaped their laws, their battles, and even their calendar. Each day was a gift from the god, and each day demanded the spilling of blood to ensure the sun's survival. And so, through hardship and hunger, the Mexica came to believe they were the chosen, the people of Huitzilopochtli, destined to fulfill his divine will with the edge of obsidian and the fire of the sun. Chapter 3. The Eagle and the Cactus. Founding Tenochtitlán. At last, after centuries of wandering, the Mexica reached the Valley of Mexico, a place of lakes and rival kingdoms, where power had already taken root. And still, they waited. For it was not enough to find fertile land. They needed a sign from Huitzilopochtli. And it came. On a small, marshy island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, they beheld a vision as foretold. An eagle, perched upon a prickly pear cactus, devouring a snake. The cactus grew from a stone, and the eagle's wings stretched wide as if to embrace the sky. To the Mexica, this was no mere bird. It was Huitzilopochtli himself, transformed and triumphant. Here, the god whispered, was the heart of their empire. The island was inhospitable, waterlogged, covered in reeds and mud, but to the Mexica, it was sacred. They began to build. With chinampas, they turned water into farmland. With stone, they raised temples and causeways. And at the center of it all, they erected the Templo, a pyramid crowned with twin shrines, one to Huitzilopochtli and one to Tlaloc, the god of rain. Thus rose Tenochtitlán, not merely a city, but a cosmic axis, a place where the heavens, earth, and underworld met under the eye of a warrior sun. Huitzilopochtli had chosen them, and now they had chosen him in return. Chapter 4. The Templo Mayor. throne of the sun and sacrifice. At the heart of Tenochtitlán, the great Templo Mayor rose like a man-made mountain, its twin stairways climbing into the heavens. One side was dedicated to Tlaloc, lord of the rains and fertility. The other, more fearsome, belonged to Huitzilopochtli, god of the burning sun and ceaseless war. To ascend those steps was to approach the very edge of the sacred. Here, on this temple, time itself was kept alive, not through clocks or calendars, but through blood. For the Aztecs, sacrifice was not cruelty. It was cosmic duty. The sun did not rise by accident. It rose because Huitzilopochtli, every single day, battled through the sky against darkness and chaos. But he could not do so alone. He needed nourishment, human hearts to fuel his journey, blood to stain the dawn with power. And so the Templo Mayor became more than a place of worship. It became the stage of cosmic maintenance. Priests in obsidian masks would raise obsidian blades, cut open the chest of a captive, and lift the still beating heart toward the sun. It was not murder. It was salvation. Without it, the sun would fall, and the world would end. To outsiders, it was monstrous. To the Mexica, it was the price of life. Chapter 5: The Solar War. Huitzilopochtli's Eternal Battle. In the sacred cosmology of the Mexica, the sun was not a passive giver of light. It was a warrior locked in endless struggle, a flaming spear hurled each day across a sky filled with threats. Huitzilopochtli, in his solar form, was that spear. And every dawn was a victory, every dusk a reminder of the looming night. Each morning he was born anew, rising from the eastern horizon to begin his daily war. His enemies were many: moon, stars, shadow, and unseen creatures of the night. Coyolxauhqui and her celestial brothers were not dead, not truly. They returned each night, vengeful and cold, trying to drag the sun back into darkness. Huitzilopochtli had to fight them again and again forever. This wasn't myth for the Mexica. It was weather, time, reality itself. When clouds gathered or solar eclipses darkened the sky, fear rippled through the city. Was the sun losing? Were the sacrifices not enough? So the warriors of Tenochtitlan became more than soldiers. They were cosmic assistants. Every battle they fought on earth was an echo of Huitzilopochtli's heavenly war. Every captive taken was an offering to help him rise again. Their blades were not just weapons. They were rays of the sun, cutting through the chaos of night. The Mexica did not merely live under their god. They fought beside him. Chapter 6: Blood for the Dawn. The Sacred Economy of Sacrifice. In the world of the Mexica, blood was currency, not of gold or trade, but of divine necessity. To sustain the sun's journey across the heavens, to feed Huitzilopochtli's strength, blood had to flow. It was not cruelty. It was sacred reciprocity. The gods had shed their own blood to create the world. Now, it was humanity's turn to give back. This cosmic debt formed the heart of the flowery wars, ritual battles not for conquest, but for captives. Opposing city-states like Tlaxcala would agree to meet on the battlefield, not to destroy one another, but to seize worthy prisoners for sacrifice. The victors returned not with plunder, but with lives. And so the Mexica warrior did not simply kill, he captured. To offer an enemy on the altar was the highest honor, a communion with the divine. A successful warrior earned not only glory, but the promise of transformation after death. To accompany the sun on its perilous journey through the sky, reborn as a hummingbird or eagle, flying beside their god. Huitzilopochtli demanded blood, but not from just anyone. He hungered for the brave, the strong, the ones whose spirits would become part of his celestial army. It was a brutal meritocracy of flesh and fire. The sun would rise again, if the balance was kept. Chapter 7. The Hummingbird of the Left. Huitzilopochtli's name holds layered meaning: hummingbird of the south, or hummingbird on the left. And this strange, delicate creature was more than a poetic symbol. For the Mexica, the hummingbird was the perfect embodiment of their god: fast, aggressive, radiant, and tireless. To watch a hummingbird in flight was to glimpse divine energy. Its iridescent feathers shimmered like fire, its wings beat faster than thought, and it darted from flower to flower like a warrior leaping between foes. Though small, it was fierce, just as Huitzilopochtli had once been, emerging fully armed from his mother to strike down an army. The left side, in Mexica cosmology, was not simply a direction. It represented the southern quarter of the world, a domain associated with fire, blood, and warfare. It was also the side of the heart, the side warriors carried their shields. To be on the left was to walk the war path of the sun, toward glory or death. Those who died in battle or sacrifice were said to return as hummingbirds, reborn into dazzling forms that flitted through the sky alongside the sun. They drank the nectar of paradise and followed Huitzilopochtli in his celestial journey, defenders of the light forevermore. Thus, even the smallest creature could echo the greatest god. Chapter 8. The Warrior's Afterlife, Following the Sun. To live as a warrior was to court death with honor. To die in battle, or better yet, as a sacrificial offering atop the temple, was not the end, but a transformation. For those claimed by Huitzilopochtli, the afterlife was not some quiet paradise. It was motion, brilliance, and eternal struggle. The souls of the fallen joined their god in his daily war. Each morning they rose with him in the east, glowing as hummingbirds and eagles. They escorted him through the sky, fending off darkness with every wing beat, every burst of solar fire. This was their reward. Not rest, but purpose. These warrior souls accompanied the sun until midday, its most dangerous arc, before descending westward into the underworld. There, other gods took over, and Huitzilopochtli began his nightly descent into darkness. But the next morning, his warrior escort would return, newly reborn. This belief shaped every Mexica battle cry, every death song. Warriors welcomed death because they knew they would not be forgotten. They would rise again in golden feathers, bearing the warmth of the sun on their backs and the roar of Huitzilopochtli in their hearts. In a world where memory was written in blood and stone, the afterlife was not just survival. It was flight, flame, and vengeance against the night. Chapter 9. The Sunstone, Cosmic Clock of War. Few artifacts speak the voice of the Mexica like the Sunstone, often misnamed the Aztec calendar. Carved from basalt and weighing over 24 tons, this monumental disk is not merely an object of timekeeping. It is a map of destiny, of sacrifice, of Huitzilopochtli's war against oblivion. At its center, a fearsome face emerges. Many believe it to be Tonatiuh, the sun god, but others argue it is Huitzilopochtli himself, jaw open, tongue as a sacrificial blade. Around him swirl glyphs that mark the previous 4 eras: worlds born and destroyed in fire, jaguars, wind, and flood. We live, the Mexica believed, in the 5th sun, an age sustained only by blood. Every edge of the stone is a lesson, arms reaching outward like sun rays, cardinal directions shaped by divine battles, symbols of sacred days and divine warnings. This was not art. It was law, prophecy, and science carved into stone. The sunstone did not simply measure time, it explained it. It reminded the Mexica of their place in the universe, both exalted and burdened, chosen by Huitzilopochtli to keep the sun alive with sacrifice. Without that, the disk foretold, the sun would cease to rise. The era would end. To read the stone was to know the weight of cosmic responsibility. Chapter 10. The twin temples, Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc. Atop the Templo Mayor, two gods shared the sacred summit. Huitzilopochtli, lord of war and the sun, and Tlaloc, god of rain, fertility, and life. Their shrines stood side by side, separated by only a few steps of carved stone, yet representing opposing cosmic forces: fire and water, blood and growth, destruction and renewal. This duality was not contradiction, it was balance. The Mexica understood that survival required both. The rains of Tlaloc brought crops and life, but without Huitzilopochtli's sun, those same crops would wither. War claimed lives, but through its sacrifice, the world was nourished. In each festival, each ritual, both gods were honored in sequence. Offerings of maize and jade were laid before Tlaloc. Beating hearts and warrior blood were given to Huitzilopochtli. But it was the god of war whose power shaped the empire. His temple was the higher of the two, his rites the more fearsome. As Tlaloc's storms came and went with the seasons, Huitzilopochtli demanded daily tribute, for the sun did not pause, not even for a moment. This twin temple was a physical reflection of the Mexica worldview. Life is a cycle of opposing forces, held in delicate tension, and it was their god of war, ever demanding and ever burning, who ensured the cycle did not break. Chapter 11. Festivals of Flame, honoring Huitzilopochtli. To walk the streets of Tenochtitlán during Panquetzalitzli, the great festival of Huitzilopochtli, was to witness a city transformed. For days, drums pounded like a second heartbeat. Banners fluttered from rooftops. Dancers painted in red and gold spun through the squares like flames given form. The air was thick with incense, song, and the weight of something older than time. This was no ordinary celebration. It was the yearly reaffirmation of the sun's strength, a retelling of the god's birth and his violent triumph over darkness. Effigies of Huitzilopochtli, made from amaranth dough and infused with blood, were paraded through the city. People offered food, music, and their own pain, piercing skin with obsidian thorns in acts of devotion. But the festival was not only joyful, it was solemn, even terrifying. For at its climax, captives were brought to the Templo Mayor. Sacrifice followed. The steps of the pyramid ran red as the priests reenacted the cosmic battle atop Cotepec. Each heart offered was another star cleared from the god's path, another shadow burned away. And yet, even in its bloodiest moments, the people rejoiced. They believed their world was being repaired, that through their devotion the sun would rise again and the god would remember their loyalty. To celebrate Huitzilopochtli was to dance with death and to find meaning in the fire. Chapter 12. The Fall of the Sun, Huitzilopochtli and the Spanish Invasion. When the Spanish arrived in 1519, led by Hernán Cortés, the Mexica saw not mere men, but omens, figures out of prophecy, pale and armed with thunder. Some priests warned they were sent by rival gods. Others whispered they marked the end of an era. But even then, faith in Huitzilopochtli did not waver. Tenochtitlán, city of the sun, welcomed its destroyers with uncertain grace. Atop the Templo Mayor, priests continued to offer blood for the rising dawn. Warriors still captured enemies, believing the god would protect them. But Huitzilopochtli, for all his power, was a god of this world. A god who needed the loyalty of people, the sacrifice of hearts, the strength of empire. And the empire was faltering. With disease, betrayal, and siege, the Mexica were broken from within and without. As Spanish cannon fire shattered stone, and the twin shrines were desecrated, the people cried not only for their lives, but for their God. For the first time in memory, the sun's strength seemed to wane. When the Spaniards tore down the Templo Mayor, replacing it with Christian crosses. It was not just conquest, it was the symbolic death of a deity. The sacred mountain of Coatepec was leveled. The war sun was silenced. But gods do not die easily. Huitzilopochtli burned into memory, into whispers, into the blood of survivors who still remembered the fire that once ruled the sky. Chapter 13. Embers in the Ash. Huitzilopochtli in the Aftermath. In the wake of conquest, as temples fell and new gods were crowned, the fire of Huitzilopochtli did not vanish. It smoldered. The Spaniards outlawed the old rites. Effigies were destroyed, rituals banned, and sacred texts burned. But memory does not yield so easily. In hidden places, under night skies and behind closed doors, stories persisted. Elders whispered the names of the old gods to their children. The tale of Coatepec, the divine birth, the warrior's leap, the cosmic struggle, lived on like glowing coals beneath cold stone. For many indigenous communities, Huitzilopochtli became more than a war god. He became a symbol of resistance, a reminder that identity, once forged in flame, does not go out when starved of air. In his absence, his myth grew. He became a ghost sun behind the colonial sky, a buried pulse in the soil of Tenochtitlán, now called Mexico City. Even converted converts could not unsee him. The very layout of the old city, its temples now lying beneath cathedrals, kept his presence alive. The hummingbird still flew, the sun still rose, and deep within the culture, his name remained carved in language, art, and bloodlines. Huitzilopochtli had been erased in stone, but not in spirit. The fire awaited its breath. Chapter 14. The Hummingbird Returns. Huitzilopochtli in modern Mexico. Today, Huitzilopochtli no longer demands blood, but he is not forgotten. His spirit pulses through the heart of modern Mexico, not as a deity of sacrifice, but as a symbol of identity, resilience, and ancestral pride. You see him in murals that stretch across government buildings, in museums where the sunstone stands like a cosmic echo, in schoolbooks where children learn the tale of the eagle on the cactus, the founding myth still honored on the national flag. Artists, poets, and philosophers have reclaimed Huitzilopochtli, not as a god of violence, but as an emblem of strength through struggle. For a people who endured conquest, colonization, and erasure, the hummingbird of the South has become a whisper from the past urging them forward. Even the language of the Mexica, Nahuatl, still carries his name. In neighborhoods of Mexico City, where ancient ruins sleep beneath paved streets, people walk on the bones of temples. The sun rises over that same lake basin, and though the Great Pyramid is gone, its shadow falls long in memory. Huitzilopochtli has evolved, not into dust, but into mythic marrow. No longer a god of fear, but of fire within, a god of movement, rebirth, and eternal fight, not for conquest, but for cultural survival. The hummingbird still flies. Chapter 15. Eternal Flame. The archetype of Huitzilopochtli, gods rise, fall, and change, but archetypes endure. And in Huitzilopochtli, we find more than a figure from Aztec myth. We find the eternal image of the sacred warrior, the one who fights not for dominance alone, but to keep the world turning. He is the guardian of cosmic order, born at the brink of annihilation. He is the morning sun that fights through shadow, the flame that refuses to die. His mythology, carved in blood and stone, echoes through other cultures, wherever the sun is feared, worshipped, or defended. Huitzilopochtli embodies the tension between destruction and renewal. He is fire that both consumes and gives light, war that both ends and protects. His legacy is not just in temples or tales, but in the very rhythm of resistance, of waking each day to push against entropy, injustice, and forgetting. In the hummingbird, we see his grace. In the sun, his fury. In every act of preservation, of language, heritage, truth, we continue his work. We fight not with obsidian, but with memory. We raise not hearts, but voices. Huitzilopochtli remains not as a relic of conquest, but as a living pulse beneath the skin of time. His flame is the reminder that light is not promised. It must be earned every dawn.